I would like to first thank each and every one of you for coming out this evening to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Student Learning Center. On behalf of the Student Learning Center staff, we just want to really extend our gratitude for you coming this evening. I know particularly on the weekend, and a beautiful weekend that we're having this particular weekend, for you to choose to spend your evening with us, we don't take for granted. We know that there are a lot of things that are pulling on people, particularly as the technology becomes more and more integrated into our daily lives, the iPhones, the Blueberries, et cetera, that people are always working. And I particularly want to extend gratitude to the administrators that are here this evening, Executive Vice Provost and Chancellor George Bleslauer. I understand several of you have been working since early this morning at OP, so I know it's been a long day, and I just really appreciate you extending your day and coming out to welcome our guests. Thank you. I want to thank my boss, Cathy Kosslyn, Vice Provost of Undergraduate Education. I want to thank Vice Chancellor Harry LeGrand for supporting students and supporting the event. I'd like to welcome Associate Vice Chancellor Linda Williams. Thank you for coming this evening. I'd like to acknowledge Howard Diabrera, our faculty that's worked closely with our math and stat drop-in, but for also bringing two of his colleagues from England that are joining us this evening, the Loxleys. So thank you so much for coming. I'd like to welcome the faculty that are in the room. Naila Nasir, who's the Chair of African American Studies. Professor Craig Evans, who's also on our Faculty Advisory Board. He's a professor in mathematics. Trying to see other colleagues. I don't want to miss anyone. I also like to wholeheartedly welcome all the SLC alumni tutors who were able to join us this evening. I'd like to welcome all the SLC current tutors that are serving as ambassadors for this evening. Welcome you. And because I know our program's going to move, I'd like to thank in advance all the staff that are here in Memorial Stadium that have been so kind and gracious hosts for us this evening. So thank you very much. And if I've forgotten anyone, please forgive me, because I am nervous. I want to cut my remarks short, but I want to welcome you. A lot of folks are wondering why we didn't do a potluck-oriented celebration. And I want to share with you why I thought it was so incredibly important to celebrate the 40 years in style. I believe the Learning Center has played a critical role in terms of welcoming and answering the call that Berkeley has always tried to do in terms of being ahead of its peer institutions in the nation and in the world. And I just really believe it is worth celebrating. I think the alumni tutors that sit at the tables, as well as the ambassadors, are a great testament to the work that has been performed in the Learning Center over the last 4 decades. And so without further ado, I'd like to welcome Jerlina Griffith. She is a colleague and a dear friend that has agreed to be the Master of Ceremonies this evening. Jerlina is the Deputy Vice President of Student Affairs at the University of California's Office of the President, where she's responsible for the day-to-day operations of Student Affairs Department, serving as the Chief of Staff and Executive Director of Student Services. Jerlina brings over 23 years of experience to the University of California. She served as UC Berkeley's Director of Student Development for 13 years. She was responsible for Res Life and New Student Services, as well as the Summer Bridge Program. And in addition to doing all her work, she's working to complete her PhD in Policy, Organization, and Measurement and Evaluation at the Graduate School of Education. Would you please be so kind to welcome warmly Jerlina Griffith? Thank you, Cara, for that wonderful and kind introduction. And I also want to extend a warm and enthusiastic welcome to everyone here tonight. And as Cara said, we had choices. We had choices about where we could be tonight, and we all chose this. And I'm so happy to be here with all of you. Some of you I've known for quite a while, some new faces, but we're all about the students. We're all about celebrating the accomplishment of the work of the Learning Center, and I would not want to be any other place. It is truly a center of transformation. The longevity of the center is testimony, I think, to the wisdom of its leaders in fostering a peer-centered, collaborative leadership model of student learning, in nurturing both the individual student development and the vitality of the academic community as a whole. Especially on campuses like Berkeley, with its many generations of brilliant, highly accomplished alumni, there can be a perception that students arrive here in full possession of the skills and strategies that will ensure their academic success and social leadership. We can easily lose track of the journey that those undergraduate years represent, an evolution of identity and intellect, self and spirit. Education is a whole person endeavor, and its success is a community-wide benefit. Bringing students together in a collaboration with their own success, understanding the deep connections between learning and leadership, and building a strong learning community has never been unimportant, but it's definitely more important now than ever, especially with the challenges connected to our economy and our democratic institutions and the extent of our global independence and outreach. There are many here who can and will testify about the profound influence of the center on their personal and professional journeys, and I'll be introducing them to you throughout the evening. Tonight is a night to celebrate this auspicious anniversary of the center's success and to hopefully pay forward. Did you hear that? Pay forward many more years with our appreciation and continued professionalism and financial support. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Cathy Kosslyn, who is the Wood Calvert Professor in Engineering, is an alumna of Haverford, Stanford, and the New York School of Drawing, Painting, and Sculpture, and is also, as Cara noted, the Vice Provost of Teaching, Learning, Academic Planning, and Facilities here at Berkeley. Her research is focused at the intersection of energy, air pollution, and environmental health work, and includes critical assessments of environmental policy and social and environmental impacts that result from the implementation of new technology or regulation. She has served on numerous professional and governing boards, too many to articulate here, and committees, including the EPA's Science Advisory Board and the California Air Research Board. Please join me in welcoming Professor Kosslyn to the stage.
Thank you. It's really an incredible pleasure to be here. And I will say, having spent the day at UCOP, this is actually really nice to be here and to be celebrating the remarkable accomplishments of really of the tutors and professionals who support our students in the Student Learning Center. I want to first acknowledge the leadership that Cara Stanley has brought to this enterprise. She is a remarkable educator, and I'm really proud to... All right. We are truly blessed at Berkeley that we have so many staff who are real partners to the faculty in the academic enterprise. And I just want to say again, Cara, you are a true partner in this enterprise with all of us. Let me give you a little bit of history and background about the Student Learning Center. It was founded in 1973, hence the 40 years. And it has been the primary academic support unit for the university serving in this time period over 80,000 students. It's trained in that time frame over 7,000 undergraduate and graduate tutors and instructors. Those individuals have gained remarkable skills themselves. So while they're also helping their fellow students, they are developing their own expertise in pedagogy, in philosophy, in teaching practice. On an annual basis, we serve roughly 8,500 to 9,000 undergraduates. Roughly 40% of the undergraduate population passes through the Student Learning Center. It has 18 professional staff with disciplinary expertise. On an annual basis, about 250 to 300 peer tutors and 20 graduate student instructors. So it is a force on this campus. It offers academic services for undergraduates in the disciplines of mathematics, physical and biological sciences, social sciences, humanities, and interdisciplinary areas of study. And in addition, it has a variety of other responsibilities that it participates in, developing support for study groups, topical workshops, providing by-appointment tutoring, drop-in tutoring, and individual tutoring. It serves as a critical liaison for the DECAL program. Those of you who know about this institution know that there is actually the opportunity for undergraduates and graduate students to develop their own courses for which students can enroll for credit through our DECAL program. And one of the things that we recognize as educators is that we need to make sure that those classes have a certain level of sophistication, of intellectual rigor, of content. And the Student Learning Center serves as the liaison between the university and the DECAL program, which adds over 300 courses annually to the curriculum. All kinds of programs that have been really important for students. It offers pedagogical support and training to Cal students who want to facilitate a DECAL class or other student-initiated classes. And it advises and mentors the leadership of our campus honor societies. We also, through the Student Learning Center, are the point or lead on the Summer Bridge program, which in collaboration with other units in student affairs and in equity and inclusion, and in collaboration with summer sessions, we've actually been able to grow that program in the last few years. So you think we've had a constrained budget? We have grown the Bridge program substantially in the last 4 years through this collaborative effort with the SLC leading the way in doing that. We've also had an interesting, innovative program that Cara has really been the force behind, the Spear Middle School Scholar Academy, which is tailored to academic and social development of middle school students, one of our ways of outreach into the community. In summary, the Student Learning Center is a comprehensive student learning center, supporting a global community of learners as they transition into the academic and cultural environment of Cal. It facilitates students' translation of the university's ways of knowing. It enlivens their understanding of the power and possibilities of their intellectual ideas, and encourages students to embrace and apply multiple perspectives and strategies. It's a really special asset. I think sometimes an under-realized and underappreciated asset, but one that we really should celebrate. And again, I want to say thank you to Cara, to the staff, and to all the tutors, past and present, who make this such an important part of our institution. It's now my pleasure to introduce a friend and colleague, a very special person, our Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost, George Breslauer. I could go through his impressive resume. I'll say a couple things. He's the author or editor of 12 books on Soviet and Russian politics and foreign relations. Sometimes I think that makes him really savvy about the Berkeley faculty. And he has served in any number of capacities on this campus, as well as in national associations like the American Association for the Advancement of Slavic Studies. But I want to say a little bit about three things that are, I think, important to know about George and why it's been such a pleasure to work with him over the last few years. He has a deep and abiding love for this university. He came here as an assistant professor. He's never left. And he's had plenty of opportunities to think about other paths that he could take. And each time he's stayed here at Cal because he can imagine no other place to be intellectually stimulated, to be surrounded by colleagues and incredible students that really, I think, have been part of the reason that he has stayed. He has a deep commitment to undergraduate education. And those of you who know about the work that has happened with the Common Good Curriculum over the last 4 years know that he has made sure that resources have flowed to make both our access to those classes available for our students, but also to ensure that we are continuing to provide at the highest level of quality. So we've actually reduced section sizes as well as adding sections. We've done a lot on the undergraduate curriculum in the last 4 years, and again, a testimony to this institution, done it at a time when resources have actually been more constrained, not in a time of plenty. And George has really led the way on that, and I think we all owe him a vote of thanks on that one. The last thing I want to say is that there's nothing like his wit and humor in a cabinet meeting, and he has this really great collection of hats. So with that, George.
Thank you, Cathy. Happy birthday, Student Learning Center. I'm really glad you're doing it up big. I mean, in 3 years, I'm going to celebrate my 40th wedding anniversary, and I plan to do it up big. But you don't have to wait 40 years. You know, as Cathy mentioned, I've been here forever. For my entire adult life, I arrived here 42 years ago and never left and never looked back. It's such a phenomenal university to be a part of. And I knew it as soon as I saw it. So I came here in 1971 as a 25-year-old assistant professor and made my way learning all the time. You just have to keep learning how to teach, learning about your students, learning how to conduct research at the highest level, and continuously pushing yourself to do all of that better and better. And it is the Student Learning Center that has helped us to make that a part of the life of all of our students here that are seeking to reach further, to expand their gifts, to find new competencies and abilities. And this is a crucial part of our undergraduate teaching enterprise. Even though it is not part of the formal curriculum, it is as important as any class students will take, because learning is not something that happens only in the classroom, though it has to happen there as well. It happens through many, many other types of interactions. Now, what makes this center, in my mind, so important is that it has been responsive to the changing character of our undergraduate student body. Now, I was an undergraduate in the early 60s, a graduate student in the late 60s, and then a professor in the 70s. And in the 60s in Berkeley, I wasn't here. I was at the University of Michigan, but it was really quite analogous. But in the 60s at Berkeley, as at Michigan, the large majority of the undergraduate student population was middle-class white males. That's what it was. I was one of them, as Seinfeld would say, not that there's anything wrong with that. I was one. I was a middle-class white male. And coming to a student body that was predominantly that and sort of like my background made it easier to teach, because I could make cultural side references that were not invidious, but references to a television show that was popular at the time or something like that, and everybody understood it. There were very few international students in the undergraduate student body. So teaching was a matter of conveying ideas and information to an audience that knew the codes, that related to the analogies and the metaphors. I am so proud of this institution that over the last 4 decades, it has seen such a flowering of diversity of so many different kinds in its undergraduate student body. This was not easy and it was not automatic. In the 1970s and 1980s, it was a product of hard work in the area of recruitment, affirmative action, seeking to make the undergraduate student body more representative of the state of California, the demographics of the state of California, to tap the top talent from all portions of the demographic pool. And we were doing that, and doing that really quite well, until the anti-affirmative action movement set in the 1990s and made it illegal to use gender or race as a formal, explicit consideration in admissions and hiring. And that saw a precipitous near-term decline as a result of that law in the admissions rates of African American, Chicano, Filipinos, and Native Americans into our student body. But we shifted our approach then, and we asked ourselves, well, socioeconomic status can, to some extent, overlap, and that is not illegal to take into account. But also, why should we think of an incoming student as someone who has demonstrated in their high school years the full capability that they have? Why should we think of, okay, you've shown, you're great, we want you, come? Rather than thinking of those students in the given context, what they showed about their character and their ability to confront obstacles and nonetheless perform at a very high level in their local context. And that, in turn, leads you also to ask questions not just about past performance, but future potential. Because as we all know, performance at the highest level is not in considerable measure, but in significant measure, a function of self-discipline, motivation, willingness to stick it through, willingness to cope with ambiguity and fear and all of that. And if you don't have that, no matter how brilliant you might be, you may just fall apart. And so we were looking for students from all parts of the demographic pool that had overcome obstacles and demonstrated that they had a lot of capability, not all of which had been tapped. In the 2000s, over the last 10 to 15 years, the educational tidal wave generated an increase in the number of first-generation, low-income immigrant populations, Asian, Latino, African, and East European, admitted to the university. In fact, 65% of most freshman cohorts came from families where at least one parent's first language was not English. In the second decade of the 21st century, the decade we're now in, we find also, in addition to that, an increase in the number of international and out-of-state students, a growing number of undocumented students, and an upsurge in students with learning differences, gaining admission to Cal on their merits. And they deserve to be here as much as anyone. So as Berkeley's student body has become increasingly diversified along gender lines, along ethno-racial lines, along national lines, with respect to learning disabilities, we have become a national model for how you adjust your pedagogy to that diversity, because diversity is also inherent in the way you learn. And people learn in many, many different ways. I've sometimes been told I have a geometric mind. And so on things that require geometric thinking, I'm pretty good. And as my wife will tell you, on things that don't require geometric thinking, I'm pretty bad. So every individual, no matter how much we might say that person is brilliant or that person is great, every individual has to find their own way of learning and build upon that in order to expand out their capability to be creative in many different areas. And that's where the Student Learning Center comes in. It's done really an absolutely extraordinary job in embracing this diversity, embracing students with all kinds of different approaches to the learning process, all kinds of different ways of thinking about knowledge and evidence and argumentation, and identifying where their strengths lie and then building upon those. Without the Student Learning Center, we would just be a large, fairly anonymous, impersonal undergraduate student body of learners who would not be getting out of their Cal education what they are getting today as a result of the efforts of the Student Learning Center. In fact, the center's work has been at the forefront of increasing and maintaining the university's retention and graduation rates, which happen to be the highest in the UC system and the third highest of all public institutions of higher education in the United States. So we're here this evening to celebrate the rich body of work that most of you in this room have contributed, and to ensure that the work of the Student Learning Center is available to future generations of Cal undergraduates for decades to come. This is a unique institution and a uniquely valuable institution. It is integral to our mission of combining exceptional excellence with exceptional access. Cal is an engine of upward mobility, and the Student Learning Center has helped that engine to ensure the upward mobility of the students who come here, who are looking to figure out how they learn best. My son went to the University of California, San Diego. He didn't get into Berkeley. He had too much fun in high school, but during his he tells me now, during his first year at San Diego, he spent the whole time, there was not a student learning center for him. He spent the whole time trying to figure out how he learns best. Once he figured it out, he did well, but that was quite revealing to me. So please help us to maintain and to expand this crucial component of academic support for undergraduates at UC Berkeley. Nothing's more important. Thank you very much.
So we're actually going to pause a bit and allow folks to eat, particularly the people who are going to be coming up in a few minutes. We want them to at least try to, when you're in these kind of spaces and you have a role to play, the last thing you do is eat because you're so busy trying to make sure the program moves forward. But I also want to acknowledge Cara. One of the things, when I was on this campus and I used to work with Cara, we'd be in meetings and we'd discuss issues and approaches to how to assist students. She always consistently talked about students as scholars. She was one of the first administrators on this campus that would consistently make sure we understood that students came here as scholars. And can you imagine a place like Berkeley where a lot of students who showed up at our doorsteps weren't even sure they should even be at Berkeley? And then to have administrators and faculty and other kind of look at you as a scholar, not a potential scholar, but a young scholar. And I want to acknowledge the young scholars at the table today. I think that this was planned so that there is, I think, a young scholar at each table. Would you please stand? That's what I'm talking about. Absolutely. Okay, when I say young scholar, I don't necessarily mean in age. I mean in your academic, I just want to acknowledge you over there, sister, in your academic pursuit, perhaps, right? Okay, thank you. And I want to tell the folks at the table to engage these young people. Ask them about their inquiry, their research. What are they doing? Ask them about their leadership. Ask them what passions they have. I'm sure they'd love to tell you, because I was one of those once, and you couldn't get me to stop talking about myself. So anyway, we'll come back in about 10 minutes, and then we'll move on with the program. Oh, hush. The people who know me are laughing a little bit too hard. This part of our program is actually what I've been waiting for all night, actually, because it really is going to illuminate what we mean by transformation. What I know about transformation is that there are typically 4 steps present in order for transformation to take place. And there are a few places on college campuses where transformations can begin and in a more deliberate and intentional way than in our learning centers. And from what I know from these highly, dare I say, somewhat intimidating, but highly accomplished alums, the Student Learning Center played a significant role in their transformation. So let me talk about those 4 things that I've observed with folks. Some of these people I do know, and some I don't, but I know of them. And these are the 4 things I'm sure were present as their transformation process began. One is they crafted a vision. They ask simply, what do I want? What do I want? Simple question. Second, they increased their knowledge. That is, they developed the wisdom and the skills to make their dreams come true. Thus, they began their learning process. And the third, they asked for feedback. Imagine that, asking for feedback, avoiding overconfidence. They sought others' advice and were willing to adapt. And then they developed or were part of a supportive group, whether that is family or peers, professional groups. These people, is somebody making a margarita? I mean, not a margarita, what's that? Martini, thank you. Because I'm like, oh, that's what it sounds like. Anyway, they developed or were part of a supportive group, whether that is family, peers, professional groups. These people took control of their personal evolution by choosing to be with like-minded supporters. So tonight, we'll hear from several amazing individuals through these 4 lenses: personal transformations, academic, pedagogical, and professional, right? So we're gonna hear about personal, academic, pedagogical, and professional. First up, Alberto Ledesma and Catherine Brown. Woohoo! Dr. Ledesma received his PhD in ethnic studies in 1996 and now works as one of the 2 writing program coordinators at the Student Learning Center. In addition to his own personal writing on Mexican immigration issues, he serves on a number of campus organizations, including Alianza, the Immigration Students Issues Coalition, and the Chancellor Staff Advisory Committee. CSAC, woohoo, go CSAC. Then we'll hear from Catherine Brown, who holds a master's in public health from San Francisco State University and currently serves as program manager of the Hypertension Nutrition Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Program and the community-based program Heart to Heart in the city of Berkeley, as well as coordinating the Community Health Worker Trainee Program. Catherine is also a trained dancer and currently teaches at the Berkeley Albany YWCA. So first we'll hear from Alberto and then Catherine. Thanks.
Thank you so much. It's kind of surreal seeing your picture all around the room, I kind of avoid, that's the reason I take pictures, because I avoid, and all of a sudden I see all this. Anyways, I'll keep my remarks short. I have to write them down because otherwise I'll forget them. And I am part of a writing program, so here it is. So it is so great to be here in this amazing space celebrating the Student Learning Center's 40th anniversary with you. I want to especially thank our director, Kara Stanley, for inviting me to share a few words. I'm very happy to tell you about the way that the Learning Center has had a transforming effect in my life. To tell you the truth, I wasn't sure I was ever going to finish that first semester at Cal in the fall of 1984. Though I had attended Summer Bridge and had done well in it, the number of my past tutors are here, Chancellor. Once the fall had started, I was in trouble. I had made the mistake of enrolling in 4 very demanding courses without consulting with my advisor. Some of you might know, students who've done that in the past. As the 4th week of the semester was coming to an end, I received my first failing grade for an assignment at Cal. I panicked at the thought that I did not have what it took to survive at Berkeley. I did not know what to do when I received that no pass on the essay I had written for Rhetoric R1A. All my Summer Bridge friends were enrolled in English courses, all of them in workshops and doing well. There was no workshop for Rhetoric R1A that semester. It was Rafael, one of my friends from high school, who convinced me to go see Mike Hardy at the Golden Bear Center. He walked me over to Mike's office and told him about my situation. Complicating things was the fact that I was undocumented at the time, and that I had trained myself, especially to avoid reaching out to any university staff for fear of being found out. But like any good tutor would do, Mike welcomed me on my own terms, and he worked with me on how I could survive the rhetoric class I was in. The collaborative, question-based process Mike used with me worked wonders. He was always interested in my intellectual experience, asked me what I thought about everything I read, asked me to think deeply about what unique arguments I could pose when the teacher gave us her prompts. And he always played the devil's advocate, always pushing me to craft precise claims about the material I wanted to debate. It was because of Mike, because he helped me develop a sense of confidence as a writer, to the point that I earned a B+ in that rhetoric class, that I decided to become a tutor myself. A couple of semesters later, when amnesty was passed and my immigration status was normalized, Mike was the first person at Cal to whom I confessed my past situation. By then, he had helped me become an R1B, helped me pass my R1B course with an A, and I was now an English major leading my own writing workshop. Even though I had been reluctant at the start, by the time I graduated from Berkeley, I have benefited from most of the SLC services and programs. Like most of my friends, my sense of community was located in 2 places, the Golden Bear Center and Building T8. As I told Alex de Guia, my supervisor, earlier this semester, the SLC helped awaken in me the seed of a scholar that already lived inside. It catalyzed a sense of confidence in what I had to say, made me feel as if I did belong at Berkeley, and it set me on a lifelong path of academic pursuit. I can honestly say that I would never have become a college professor if not for Mike Hardy and the SLC. And in the classroom, my approach was always also influenced by that same celebration of serendipitous discovery that Mike taught me. My family, too, has been transformed by the SLC. As the first in my family to attend Berkeley, I made sure that my sisters and brother knew about the SLC and what it had to offer when they got here, too. For an undocumented family from East Oakland, the SLC made possible our collective metamorphosis. And now, there are 2 PhDs, 1 master's, and 1 bachelor's with honors among my parents' 4 kids. All of us, Berkeley Bears, all of us forever transformed by the Student Learning Center. Thank you.
Good evening. In preparing for tonight's speech, I struggled quite a bit with pulling together the right words. Several questions swirled through my head. What will I say? How will it be received? As I sat staring at a blank computer screen for what seemed to be an eternity, I continued to wrestle with the internal struggle of finding the right words to capture how much the Student Learning Center and its teaching has done for me. What could I say to fully express how much of an impact the center has had on me as a first-generation college student, and the impact it continues to have on me in my efforts to create positive change in the world? As a student, a tutor, a workshop leader, an interim writing program coordinator, the SLC was key in preparing me for a world that is often unforgiving and unsupportive of different perspectives, thoughts, and beliefs. A world that is not easily easily willing to accept a person like me. If we were to view my life by broader society standards and beliefs, I am not supposed to be here. A Black woman raised by a single mother in one of the toughest environments, East Oakland, California, is not supposed to have a high school diploma, let alone a bachelor's or a master's degree. Day in and day out, I saw my grandmother and mother struggle to make ends meet and to make sure that my siblings and I had the bare necessities: food in our stomachs, clothes on our backs, and a roof over our heads. I can remember the countless nights of us sleeping on the floor as gunshots flew by. I could only imagine my grandmother's and mother's worries and how much they prayed for a better and safer place for us to live. However, despite these struggles, my grandmother and mother never made us feel like we were any less than anyone else. In the face of these adversities, my grandmother and mother were radicals. They were set to prove society wrong. They created an environment that was rooted in faith, love, and discipline, and strived to have me and my siblings to be better than we had ever imagined that we could be. They were creating a foundation for us to succeed. This foundation that my mother and grandmother created would be tested in the fall of 1996. I can remember it like yesterday. I had gotten accepted to UC Berkeley and was set to meet with my College of Letters and Science counselor to plan my schedule. I was so excited because this was the school I had dreamed of going to and had worked so hard to get into. With my admission, I knew that this moment was much more than me. Not only was I the first in my family to go to college, but I was carrying the pride of a grandmother that did not finish the 10th grade and had to solely provide for 5 children by cleaning houses and styling hair in her kitchen. And a mother who never got a chance to go to college because she was not considered poor enough to receive any scholarships and had no way of paying for her education on her own. As I entered the counselor's office, I was filled with happiness, smiling from ear to ear, not expecting what was to come next. After she reviewed my transcript, my SAT, and Subject A scores, she turned to me with a sigh and said, "You're not ready for Cal. I recommend that you go to community college first before you even consider coming back." In that moment, I felt my soul deflate. Despite getting my admissions package and all the hard work I put to get in here, I was now faced with someone that felt they could dictate my future. After these words slipped out of her mouth, my ears stopped listening and I was numb. I can remember walking out of the office on the verge of tears, walking past my mother so that she couldn't see me cry. Even though there were no tears rolling down my face, I did the best that I could to mask my emotions. I should have known better, because a mother always knows the truth. She asked me what happened, and I told her. I never forget her words. "Do you want to be here?" I stood there wondering why she would ask such an obvious question, but I responded with a yes. Her response was, "That woman doesn't dictate your success, and she can't keep you from going here. If she thinks that, she's a lie." With my with my mother's words, I could feel myself inflate again. My mother was right, and in that moment, I began to understand that someone else's no does not have to be mine. But from this experience, I began to realize that Cal was much bigger than I'd ever imagined. In classes where I was one of 200 or more, I began to feel myself slowly becoming lost in the fold. But a beacon of hope appeared, the SLC. I can remember Luisa Giulianetti visiting our English 1A class. She came to promote the writing workshops offered at the center that complemented the curriculum in the course. As I swirled in a sea of confusion and self-doubt, this offer seemed like a lifesaver, being casted to me. I just had to take it, and I'm forever thankful that I did. Not only did the tutoring help me excel in my courses, the guidance and support from the staff gave me the courage and strength to find my voice and realize that I'd mattered. and so began my transformation. No longer was I afraid to ask for help. No longer did I feel like I was alone and lost. And even more so, the words of that counselor did not apply to me. In closing, again, many thanks to the Student Learning Center and their staff for the continuous love and support that not only they have given me, but the thousands of students that have come through its doors. Here's to 40 more years and many more transformations. Thank you.
So we understand that the Student Learning Center is not just mortar and brick and staff and services. It's a place of transformation. It's a place of deep caring. You'll hear the theme over and over again about particular individuals in that center that touch particular lives. And I think, and many of them are still here and they're here tonight, and that's a wonderful thing. So next up, Maria G. Martinez and Joel Portillo, who will talk about academic transformations. Maria is a doctoral student in the UC Berkeley Department of Mathematics. She gave up her childhood goal of becoming a doctor or a dentist when she took a pre-calculus class in the summer bridge program. Discovering the joy of mathematics combined with the love of learning that her parents who immigrated from Mexico instilled in her. Maria is now well on her way to a career as a mathematics professor. Joel holds a BA in psychology with a minor in Spanish literature and is the founder of Kip King Collegiate, a charter high school that serves underrepresented minority students. A former psychology study group leader at the Learning Center, Joel is currently completing an MBA and a master's in education at Stanford. And, okay, Stanford is good. And hopes to, that's all right, and hopes to continue his career in education, building on the outstanding work that he has already accomplished. So we'll hear from Maria and then Joel.
Just need to lower that just a little bit. Hello, my name is Maria Martinez. I'm a PhD student in the math department here at UC Berkeley, and I've had the privilege of participating in multiple programs at the Student Learning Center, as a tutor, a student, a co-coordinator, and adjunct instructor with social studies, writing, and math programs. So you can kind of say I have a little bit of experience with the Student Learning Center. I honestly wouldn't be studying mathematics without the guidance and the help that I received at the Learning Center. This place has shaped me into much of who I am and who I want to be. Throughout my, sorry, so nervous. Throughout my K through 12 education, though I was considered a smart and hardworking student, I was typecasted as someone who was pretty awful in the technical fields. I was highly encouraged to stick to the environmental science and art because I was actually pretty good at those. My teachers got really frustrated with my inability to learn things like math and gave up on me. But the Student Learning Center didn't do that. One of the greatest lessons I learned here is that anybody can learn. And the issue is a matter of how one is taught. I can speak best about my struggle with math. My experience with the Student Learning Center, my first experience with the Student Learning Center was in Summer Bridge. This is where the SLC became both my home and the source of constant torture. I was struggling to learn pre-calculus, and it was truly, truly painful. I'd never worked so hard to fail. Thankfully, the staff didn't give up on me. And instead, the Mikes and Rudy and Andrea, among other tutors who I constantly bugged, encouraged me to keep trying. More importantly, they took the time to see what my deficits were. And instead of turning me away like my high school had done, they took the time to teach me how to take good lecture notes, how to read a math textbook, how to ask questions without the fear of sounding dumb, and to never give up. With their guidance and encouragement, I did this. I put in countless hours with the tutors and alone to pass the class with my very first A+. Thank you. I continued to take math classes and eventually fell in love with the field, which is why I'm studying math now. And inspired by the teaching I received at the SLC, my goal is to become a professor, both to continue my educational journey and hopefully to be able to teach others and inspire them not to give up on themselves, and certainly never let math be the reason why they don't reach their goals. I learned it, and so can they. I want to thank you for the honor of letting me share my experience with the Student Learning Center, and thank you to all the mentors who I've come to admire greatly. Thank you.
It's fall 2002. My name is ID number 161953991. My chances of successfully graduating from UC Berkeley are not very high. The statistics say so. Let me explain. My parents just drove me up from South Central LA, dropped my bags on the curve, hugged me goodbye, and took off. As I walk to get my dorm keys, I feel scared. I don't belong. You see, my father didn't have an opportunity to ever go into a classroom. He can't read or write. My mother only completed second grade in El Salvador. My older brothers dropped out of high school to join gangs. I am a first-generation student. I am an immigrant. I came to the US at age 11 without speaking the language. I am the first in my family to complete high school and to now be walking on a college campus. Sure, I did well in high school, and I went to the #1 high school in LAUSD. Correction, the #1 worst high school in LAUSD. My SAT scores are very low. How did I get into Berkeley? I don't understand. I don't see many people who look like me here. I don't belong. I move into my dorm room, and along with my academic and social insecurities. Day 1, I stepped into college pre-calculus. I took the scores in high school. Wait, professor, you're going too fast. If I say something, I'll probably sound stupid. I'm sitting in my dorm, working on my problem set by myself. I don't understand it, but I should. I took this class before. First C ever on a quiz. I don't understand. I studied for so long. I did the problems over and over again. Study group. My scholarship program suggested that I join a study group at the Student Learning Center. I don't like working with other people. I never have. I do it better all on my own. I decided to go anyway, and I joined an adjunct course for pre-calculus. So many confused faces in that room. Am I not alone? Sorry. We will be doing practice tests. It's better to struggle and fail here than on the real test, said the instructor. We will identify areas of struggle to focus on those. Ask questions when confused. We will form outside study groups, do flashcards, get extra problems, do whatever it takes. The adjunct instructor mentions a study strategies course. Fine, I'll take that too. They have me doing all these things that are just adding to my workload. Look through your syllabi and create a calendar with all your major deadlines. Keep track of all you do on an hourly basis. Attend your professor's office hours. Make it a goal to ask questions during lecture at least once a week. What's my learning style? I have never been asked that before. I read and memorize as much as I can as I go. That's how I've done up to now. Weeks go by. A friend asked me if I want to go to the party this weekend. I say, let me look at my calendar to make sure that I don't have any major projects coming up this week. Did I really just say that? Social suicide. The semester's flying. I go to my routine office hours to see my math professor. She asks for my grade on the midterm. Oh, so you were the one who set the curve, she replies. Semester ends, straight A pluses. I belong. I can go on and on about the Student Learning Center. The first semester was only an introduction to what would be the beginning of finding my identity as a confident scholar. After this experience, I took every adjunct course I possibly could, and I continued to learn more about myself as a scholar. In sophomore year, I joined the SLC team as a study group leader in sociology and eventually in psychology, which, as you will hear from some of my peers, was just another way to dig deeper into understanding my own learning process and that of others. Beyond academic support, the Student Learning Center came to be the place where I would always go for safety and confidence. Somehow, my insecurities were left at the door when I entered the Chavez Center. I wonder if my trajectory would have been different had I not joined the Student Learning Center when I did. Would I have continued to take it all alone, without seeking help, without speaking up in class, without forming study groups, and meeting other people that way? I think so. Would I have been a university medal finalist who got to sit on stage during graduation? Would I have had time and academic courage to do an honors thesis exploring the effects of stereotype threat on English language learners like myself on standardized tests? Would I have been able to beat the odds, given that only a small percentage of students with my background go on to earn a bachelor's degree? Would I have gone on to work on education reform for 4 beautiful and rewarding years post-graduation? I don't think so. Hi, everyone. My name is Joel Portillo. I'm getting ready to graduate this coming June with an MBA and a master's in education from a university we should not talk about. I cannot think of a better place to be tonight than with you beautiful people who, with whatever capacity it is that you work for the Student Learning Center, you make it possible for students like me to grow a love for learning and to really focus on developing as a scholar. Thank you.
If these testaments aren't an example of the reality that we are not our condition, that our condition does not determine our future. I've been so inspired hearing the stories. I'm really happy that you guys are taking us through your journey because it is inspiring. It is absolutely inspiring. And, you know, as much as you think about your own lives and you're sitting here and you're thinking, well, you know, what about me? Draw inspiration from these stories. They are incredible to know that people could be born in a particular condition and with tenacity, with vision, that they just set the bar. And all of us play a role in that. If we're here tonight, we had something to do with somebody's success. And I think we should all just give ourselves a hand for that. So next up are Hal Levy and Maria Villaseñor, who will share with us their reflections on pedagogical transformations. So, Dr. Levy is a lecturer at San Francisco State University and California State University, Monterey Bay, and is chair of the history department at Bentley School, an independent high school in the Bay Area. A former writing tutor at the Student Learning Center, Kyle received his doctorate in history from UCLA and is working on a book manuscript charting the development of rural communities in California and their contribution to cultural and economic change in metropolitan spaces before World War II. That sounds just like a book, doesn't it? Holding a doctorate in ethnic studies from UC Berkeley, Maria is an associate professor of Chicano Latino studies and coordinator of the first-year seminar program at Cal State University. Drumroll, Cal State University, Monterey Bay. She's co-authored an article, Mejorista, Mentoring for Chicanos, Latinos in Higher Education, which will be published in the Journal of College Student Retention, Research Theory, and Practice this year. And it's a product of collaboration with two former students. So Dr. Villaseñor notes that she is a twin. She is a new mother of twins and believes, therefore, in the power of pairs.
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening. We're going to do this together, if that's okay.
As we believe in the power of pairs.
I am also a twin.
And with that, we begin. Hi, everyone. Kyle and I also prepared written comments because we are very verbose, and that's a way for us to stay focused. So I was hired to tutor writing at the Student Learning Center in the late 1990s when I was a second semester freshman. And at the time, I was very convinced that I wanted to be a journalist. And by the end of my first semester of tutoring, I knew I wanted to do work that involved teaching and learning and writing. I was hooked. Today, I'm a professor of Chicano Latino Studies at Cal State University, Monterey Bay in the Division of Humanities and Communication. I also direct our campus's first-year seminar program, which serves approximately 1,000 freshman students per year. And besides Chicano Studies, I also occasionally teach our division's lower division English communication writing requirement, and this semester I'm teaching our senior capstone course. And I give you this small snapshot of my current professional responsibilities, and believe me, I teach in a CSU, so this is a small snapshot of my professional responsibilities by way of introduction and as a preface to my comments about pedagogies. And I want to begin by making the following point. Before I became a writing tutor at the Student Learning Center, I had not ever heard the word pedagogy, nor did I have any idea what it meant. And now, all these years later, not a working day goes by that I don't think about what I learned about pedagogies at the SLC. And so for these reasons, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share with you today a little bit more about what I learned.
Like Maria, I started the Student Learning Center in the late 90s. It was an amazing time to be alive, as I'm sure we all remember. The 90s, come on. I mean, the 90s, I should say. I came to Berkeley knowing I wanted to be a historian and an educator, but I didn't quite know what that meant. I was the first in my family to earn a college degree, tied with my twin brother who walked across stage with me at Zillerbach Hall, but I like to say I was the first. So I kind of lacked the intellectual capital that I saw a lot of my peers having at UC Berkeley. The Student Learning Center paid me in that capital. They also paid me in real money, which I remember being very important at the time. It was. So today, I chair a history department in an independent high school where a significant portion of my job is dedicated to developing curriculum and mentoring new educators who are entering into the field. I'm also a lecturer at both San Francisco State University and at Cal State University, Monterey Bay, where I teach a range of courses from introductory historical methods seminars to classes in American cultural history to the final thesis pro seminar. Like Maria in each of these positions, I rely daily on the pedagogical training I received at the Student Learning Center. Most often verbalized in this form: what would Louisa do? What would Liz do? What would Cara do? And if you don't believe me, those of you who know me, you know that I actually say these things out loud. I've been thinking about getting a tattoo on my wrist. Tonight, we've been charged with talking a little bit about pedagogical transformations augured forth by our experience at the Student Learning Center. As Maria said, my own sense of what pedagogy is came from my experience there. A revelation for me as a tutor at the Student Learning Center was that teaching shouldn't be top-down or product-driven. This pedagogical notion that education is collective, a non-hierarchical experience for all participants, is fundamental to the approach found there. A significant part of becoming a tutor at the SLC is developing an understanding of how different educational models function, not simply in terms of apparent outcomes, like a successful literary analysis paper or an improved score on a calculus exam, but in developing how we think and interact in an educational environment. I remember this being central to my experience in tutor training seminars with Liz Keithley and Louisa Giulianetti, two individuals to whom I owe my career. I wish someone else had cried. Should really just get the ball rolling. In those seminars and the mentoring they provided, as I worked with individual students and running workshops, I came to understand that education could and should be a shared experience between all parties that brings down barriers between people. I teach in a discipline where the chairs are often fixed. By this, I mean that historians are often trained, and I use this word quite loosely, to believe that good teaching is done in a lecture environment where one person talks and everyone else listens. And as Maria noted before, I love to talk. So this seemed great to me at first. The chairs are fixed in place. We know what this environment is like. Indeed, many of our physical spaces and our teaching responsibilities throughout academia are built around this model, even today. Yet in my first days as a tutor, I came to see that this model was built around false assumptions of knowledge and control. Early on, I remember Liz Keithley, talking to the members of my tutor training seminar about the importance of the student holding the pen. And for those of us who are writing tutors, we know that lesson. At first, this was very frustrating to me. It would be so much easier, I thought, if I could just lead the session and fix the paper. But as we talked about it as a group, I realized my assumption of power undermined, not supported, the learning process. I started to become conscious of my position, my privilege, and my place at the table by the simple act of surrendering that pen. I also grew to understand that my role was not to be an authority, but instead to be an advocate of each student and their own learning process. In an educational climate which is increasingly quantified and transactional, the notion that learning should be horizontal and shared between teacher and student is still a radical one for some. As a young tutor, and even today, as a still quite young and, dare I say, charming, attractive educator and scholar, this was an exciting idea for me. So much of my experience in high school and even in college and graduate school was built around the ultimate product, some tangible intellectual good that could be traded in exchange for a grade. Process-driven learning means that students are met where they are, allowing for differentiation in classrooms and in assessments. At the Student Learning Center, I saw a focus on process rather than just on product, through a dialogue of tutor and tutee, roles that are not as balkanized as professor and student. It was in this relationship and in the power that students have holding the pen that genuine learning flourished.
So one of the first lessons I remember from our tutor training seminars was about strengthening our powers of observation as readers. At the time, I remember Liz Keithley saying something to the effect of, what if as readers of this student essay, we didn't start by trying to inventory strengths and weaknesses, but instead started by making observations about the writing? What if we started by just trying to understand the writer and his or her ideas? In practice, it took a lot of practice. It was not easy. If my mind now has to resist being quick to judge, my 19-year-old mind had never before contemplated that refraining from judgment would have any use. All these years later, I'm expected to assign grades, to evaluate student writing with the eyes of a critic and a judge. But thanks to the SLC, my first lens, even when I am assessing or evaluating, is the lens of the observer. Do I see these as contradictions? Not really. On the contrary, I find that having a keen sense of observation and sensitivity towards students in their writing allows me to give more constructive, productive feedback and to produce more authentic, informed assessments. Using my powers of observation and reading student writing also facilitates my students being heard and feeling heard instead of feeling like their words on a page are a series of problems that need fixing. This also teaches students that written communication should ultimately be dialogical, not an empty, thankless, frustrating academic exercise. A pedagogical approach that emphasizes observation also ultimately gestures towards a way to operationalize an assets-based philosophy of teaching and learning. Assets-based learning emphasizes the gifts and talents that a learner brings to the learning situation rather than emphasizing the deficits that a student might have. When we use our powers of observation in a non-judgmental way, we almost cannot help but see the assets of a learner as the intellectual heart of their ideas become more visible to our sharply trained eye. Another important pedagogical lesson from my time at the SLC: ask questions, listen, ask open-ended questions. Remember that you don't know the answer to the questions, and that's why they are questions. I learned about listening and asking questions through the practice of peer tutoring and leading workshops and discussions, but first in the training seminars that modeled the approaches that we were taught to use. I learned that approaching teaching and learning with a questioning mind would promote mutual discovery, that as a tutor, I had as much, if not more, to learn than the person being tutored. In the context of the peer education that's practiced at the SLC, this approach deconstructs hierarchies and promotes the learning of all involved. Now, as a professor, this powerful lesson is one that I'm constantly needing to relearn. This semester, a male freshman student in one of my classes sits in the back of the classroom. He never makes eye contact with me and has all semester, for quite some time, was striking me as quite disengaged and rude. Reading a personal essay of his, I learned that he has Asperger's syndrome. I remember in that moment reading that essay about the SLC, and I wish I had thought to ask him about his behavior, or even had the opportunity to ask him before judging his behavior as rude. I could stand up here all night really giving you examples of times I wish I'd asked more questions of my students, and of the even greater number of times I've asked a question of a student and learned something valuable. Questioning and listening, two skills that are essential for meeting students where they're at, and Kyle has already spoken quite eloquently about this, instead of where I imagine they are or where I wish they were. Questioning and listening, two touchstone pedagogies in the cultivation of student success. It may sound corny, and it also risks being repetitive, since I know that over the last 40 years, probably thousands and thousands of undergraduate SLC tutors have emerged as alums that could say the same. But professionally, I owe an enormous debt to the Student Learning Center and to my teachers and mentors there. Indeed, it is not an exaggeration to say that as a professional in higher education today, almost everything I do, from meeting students in office hours to designing curricula, to sitting in meetings with administrators, is marked by the lessons I learned and the experiences I gathered while an SLC tutor. My debt to the SLC is one that, on the one hand, I know is impossible to repay. I really know that. But on the other hand, it's a daily inspiration for continuing to grow and learn in service to students.
For me, this debt that Maria speaks of, that I've come to recognize the Student Learning Center as more than just a place where I was trained to be an educator and the educator that I am today. Instead, it's a home place. It's a place for me and where me and many others feel this way, that it is our home, many of whom are here tonight. It's a learning community that has introduced thousands of educators to pedagogies that unite people with common cause and shared experiences, that allows for people from myriad backgrounds to not only to receive a university education, but to transform what a university education even is through advocacy and our own participation in educational communities throughout the world. Indeed, I feel like my own desire to revolutionize the world around me comes from the fact that I'm able to return to this place, whether in physicality or in spirit, which nurtures and nourishes me as an educator and as a human being. The SLC, or rather the communities of learners that fill it, have given me many things. It has given me a career. It has given me my friends, including my best friend who's on stage with me, and a group of colleagues that will be forever in my life. It has provided me with experiences which inspire me to do more and to take risks in my teaching. Most significantly, it has given me the drive to share my experience with others, not just about pedagogy, but also about the importance of a home place like the Student Learning Center to the success of students at every stage of learning.
Yeah, Kyle talked a little bit about professional transformation, so let's talk more about that on this subject of how the Learning Center has also impacted professions. So let me introduce Bonsoon Lin and Yvette Gulot. Bonsoon Lin began as a drop-in science tutor at the Student Learning Center and is now an adjunct instructor for mathematics, assisting in the coordination of the Mathematics and Statistics program at the center. Bonsoon has also worked in the Summer Bridge program and the TRIO program, co-sponsored by the Student Learning Center. He says that he strives to enrich students' learning experience to foster connections between students, faculty, and staff, and to empower students to meet and go beyond their academic goals. My friend, my buddy, my colleague, Yvette Gulot, is the Assistant Vice Provost and Executive Director for Education Partnerships at the University of California Office of the President, where she provides leadership and oversight to the university's system-wide activities related to K-12 educator preparation, professional development, and leadership, college preparation and access, and K-12 and higher education partnerships. Yvette received all of her degrees, her BA, her MA, and her PhD in English from UC Berkeley, and completed the Management Development Program at the Harvard Institutes for Higher Education and the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And she previously served as the director of the Early Outreach Program here at UC Berkeley, and she was also a 3-time recipient of the Distinguished Service Award. So I'm gonna ask Bonsoon to come forward, and then Yvette.
Tough act to follow, I guess. I've been advised to not start with a joke, so this evening, to thoroughly entertain you, I prepared 3. Don't worry, it's 2 short ones and 1 long one. Okay. Joke, joke, joke. All right, it's not too funny. It's not too funny. Sorry, I'm not too used to talking without a chalk and talking math, so I have to break the ice. Okay. In all seriousness, my name is Bonsoon, and I'm an adjunct instructor, as introduced, here at the Student Learning Center, and I work with Mike and Mike at the math program. And I started when I was a freshman here at Cal 10 years ago, and I started working here as a general chemistry tutor with Richard at the science program. And as a freshman, I wanted to tutor because I thought I was smart, and I knew everything there is to know. Right? And what better way to show off my knowledge to tutor? Now, what arrogance, you say, but I enjoyed every moment of it. But I remember one time, a student asked me, why? It was some question about some orbital structure of electrons in an atom, and I said, don't worry, it's not going to be on a test. It's beyond the scope of the course. Now, don't get me wrong. It was beyond the scope of the course, and it was not on the test. And the student probably took comfort in knowing that he doesn't need to know. How odd that may sound. But that doesn't just happen once. Why? Students keep asking me questions. Don't worry, you don't need to know. I kept responding. But really, the core of the matter is not that my Chem 1A students don't need to know, but rather I didn't know. And I probably made an impression on students that they never needed to know, when this could be potentially lead to more intellectual pursuits, perhaps not with me, but with their GSIs, with professors, perhaps even research. It was an opportunity to encourage them to find out what they want and to pursue their curiosity. And all this may be lost because I didn't know. Now, I think most of my colleagues will agree that one of the hardest things for any person to say is the phrase, I don't know, especially if you're a tutor. Now, this takes certain humility. And as a tutor, it's not just saying, I don't know, but rather follow up with a direction, directing the student to the right resources, and perhaps another person, another tutor, or their GSIs, or their professors to find out. And also for the tutors themselves to find out for themselves. After all, the desire to know, to learn, and to progress is why we're here. It really isn't easy to be a good tutor or instructor, and I have to be more mindful of what I say and what I do, making conscious efforts to promote, to properly motivate why we're doing things and why we're learning certain things, and to encourage my students to discover and to continue to be marveled by the wonders the world have to offer. It is not just that I can help my students learn, but also I may learn and grow with them. In the past 9 years, the Student Learning Center has provided me this platform to do just that. From being a student staff to study group leader to now instructor, adjunct instructor, the Learning Center gave me the opportunity to both grow personally and professionally, and also to appreciate the value of teaching and learning here at the SLC. And so that I can continue to be a better teacher, a better student, and I'm greatly grateful for all my mentors here at the SLC. And tonight here we gather to celebrate the Learning Center's 40 years. And I'd like to salute and congratulate our hard work, dedication, and service to the students and to this university. For our work is not trivial, and certainly is no joke. Thank you.
Where's Cara? Where? There she is, okay. Well, I wanted to thank Cara and all of the planning committee members for the opportunity to come up here and talk to you about something that matters more to me than anything I've ever done, which is to be a tutor and a writing center coordinator at the Student Learning Center. I spent my first semester at Berkeley hiding in the stacks of the Moffett Library. I remember that I had Latin class at 8, and the Bible as literature at 4, and I didn't know a soul on this campus except for my grandmother's friend, Miss Edna, who worked in the counseling department. I had nowhere else to go and no one to talk to. Although in retrospect, I think my grades were really awesome that semester because all I did was study. I had transferred to Berkeley from a small private college in Colorado, and the differences between the University of Denver and the University of California at Berkeley were overwhelming. Put simply, I was terrified to be here. And Moffett was my sanctuary until I found the Student Learning Center. So don't worry, I eventually found a friend. Her name was Valerie Carno, and she's now a professor of English at the University of Rhode Island. And she recruited me to be a writing tutor. And I thought that I would have an opportunity to learn more about helping students, maybe improve my own writing. But really, I wanted to find some people that I could have coffee with and talk about books with. I'll be honest. That's what I was here to do. But I found so much more than that. And I am really happy to say that I've spent the last 20 years of my career building upon the foundation that was so carefully laid for me by Michael Hardy, Tom Hawkins, Liz Keithley, and Rainey Rust. I didn't want to leave the Learning Center ever. The Learning Center was my intellectual community. I found a husband a few doors down. This was a great place. And in fact, until I came to the Learning Center, I had never given much thought to achieving a master's or a PhD. But I was inspired to do so because I spent my days surrounded by people who took literature and writing seriously, and they saw the study of writing as a valuable lifelong pursuit. And while certainly my professors were encouraging, it really was the writing program that solidified my interest and helped me choose a path. From the Learning Center, I went on to administer the tutorial program under the leadership of Jerry Takahashi in the Athletic Studies Center. From there to graduate study here at Berkeley and a doctorate in English. But the Learning Center always stayed with me. Even when I was writing my dissertation, Liz Keithley's voice was in my head. Some examples. Topic sentences that answer how or why questions are going to lead to more interesting analysis than those that answer a what question. I used to even cut my dissertation chapters apart and move them around physically on the floor because that was a strategy that I would use with students who were struggling with organization for their essays. And even today, you can call upon me to visit a school or a program and give a personal statement workshop that is filled with the strategies and techniques from English 310, the Writing Tutor Seminar. And if you don't believe me, Liz, it's on YouTube. And along the way, I found myself involved in the university's K-12 academic preparation programs, what you know as outreach, and that is where my training from the Learning Center really took hold. What I learned as a tutor about respecting students, valuing the assets that they bring to the classroom, to their writing, and to their thinking, was a perfect fit for what the university was trying to do more of, and that was to help more educationally disadvantaged, low-income students prepare and be successful in competitive application to places like Berkeley. What outreach didn't have so much of, but what the Learning Center had prepared me for, were people who had worked closely with UC undergraduates and had extensive understanding of those educational and learning strategies that help students come here and persist, graduate, and go on successfully. So knowing what I knew from the Learning Center about retention and what knowledge, skills, and abilities best ensured student success, I was able to help build academic programs for high school students that mirrored college-level experiences. And as a result, I was able to make immediate contributions to the quality and the rigor of the programming that UC was offering. Our high school students thrived, and I credit it to the training and mentorship that I received here that helped me create a bridge from K-12 to higher education for EAOP students. And today, in my role as the Assistant Vice Provost overseeing the University of California's system-wide portfolio of K-12 student academic preparation and teacher education programs, I still draw on that foundation. Through the Learning Center, I became part of a community of scholars that was critical to helping me define my future career path, and I will be forever thankful for the professional guidance, the collegiality, the mentorship, and most of all, the friendship that I found here. A few months ago, I had the privilege of attending the opening of the UC Irvine Center for Writing Excellence. And as I walked into the building on the shelves, they had a bunch of green books. What were they called, Liz? When Tutor Meets Student. So I want you to know that the work that you've done to publish student writing is transforming not only the students here, but the students throughout the state. So thank you very much. And congratulations on 40 years.
Thank you all alums for coming back and sharing your stories and what the Learning Center has meant to you. We as a center want to honor one of our former colleagues, Lorraine Rainey Rust. And I want to tell you a little bit about Rainey. Rainey and I entered as assistant directors when I started in 1992 in the Learning Center. But Rainey was one of the founding members of the SLC staff in 1973. And I want to tell you a little bit about Rainey and why it is that we want to set up an endowment in Rainey's name. Rainey possessed the clarity of purpose, commitment to social justice, and was a fierce community servant. She loved politics, God, and music. Not necessarily in that order, but all three enhanced her spirit. In addition, we both love fine linen, so we had a lot of laughs when I would spend the night with her as she was battling cancer. She enjoyed dancing And for all that remember Rainey, she wore resplendent colored scarves. She loved eating good food, having a good glass of wine, canoeing, bird watching. She used to make eggnog that was basically a little egg and nog with a whole lot of alcohol. And Rainey loved to laugh. One of the things, if anyone spent time with Rainey, she would always boast that she was so proud to be called her father's large, strapping girl. Rainey adored her father, as she adored her two children, and Marion and Dan have joined us. Marion is a professor of English at the University of Kentucky, and Dan is a pediatrician here in Oakland, as well as her husband, Ted. In addition, she loved her beautiful 3 grandchildren. But what was most important to me is Rainey was a good and loyal friend. She was a graduate of Radcliffe College and Berkeley School of Education. She served Cal undergraduates through the decades of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Rainey retired from the university in 1999, and after a courageous battling of cancer, she demonstrated a majestic spirit. She had an open heart and a belly full of good living. Rainey passed away on May 20th, 2009. And why that sticks with me, it was the day before my 49th birthday. During her tenure here at SLC, she was the social science coordinator, she was an assistant director, and she retired as a co-director along with myself. One of Rainey's favorite formats of service in the Student Learning Center was the adjunct program in the social sciences and humanities. So with the desire to honor Rainey Russ's work and years of service to the SLC staff wants to institutionalize her legacy by establishing an endowment for the Rainey Russ Social Science and Humanities Adjunct Program. So 2 of my colleagues will share personal stories about their relationship with Rainey.
You've heard this name a lot tonight. Liz Keithley, who I had the pleasure of sitting with at dinner. I can't read. And Gonzalo Arizon will be informing us about the Rainey Russ Endowment Fund. Liz is currently an assistant director of the Learning Center, where she served for over 20 years in a variety of capacities, including writing tutor. We heard about your legacy, about the writing thing. That's amazing. Workshop leader, writing program coordinator, and as the Student Learning Center's trainer and advisor for the DECAL course facilitators. Her teaching and research have focused on the transition student writers make at a large research university and the process of developing a tutoring and teaching pedagogy. In working with student writers and student tutors, Liz says that she delights in both the individual process of discovery and the power of dynamic group discussions. As a study strategist program coordinator for the Student Learning Center, Gonzalez has 15 years of experience assisting undergraduates with study strategies. He also trains peer tutors for the center and has worked extensively with a wide range of students, including first-generation college students, transfer and re-entry students, students of color, students experiencing academic difficulty and are on probation status, and students completing a senior thesis. As an undergraduate at Berkeley, he was a writing tutor and other voices student coordinator for the Learning Center. He graduated in 1993 with the BA in English. He went on to earn his MA in American Literature from UC Santa Barbara in 1997. His research interests include learning assistance theories, narratives of educational identity formation, and Chicano studies. So Liz, where's your partner? Is he here? Great, come on up.
Well, Yeah, this is hard, partly because the moving talks that so many of you have given, I can't thank you enough for sharing all of our speakers from your heart about your experiences and some of your time with us. And I'm just really moved to be able to say something in honor of Rainey. But although my heart is very full, I don't want to be too somber, because Rainey loved laughter, she loved joy. Cara, I think this event is such a perfect way to honor her. She would be, a party, music, food, people who care about each other, great conversation. So Rainey, I'm sure, is here and cheering us on. I just want to say a little bit about my experiences with Rainey as a staff person at the Learning Center. It's hard for me to kind of separate Rainey from the SLC and talk about what her contribution to the SLC was, because they're so intertwined. I think that the spirits, that the characteristics that Rainey brought of, as Cara spoke, that passion for social justice and the just joy of an inquiring mind, of all the interesting things there were to learn about people and about the world, that really have fed what the SLC is today. I think a lot of our values and a lot of the things that make the SLC the place it is are parts of Rainey that live on. So I'm very much honored to be able to be part of announcing the Lorraine Rainey Rest Endowment Fund. And I know that she will love that as a way to honor her. So I would like to say a couple things, though, about what Rainey meant to me personally as a staff person. I came to know Rainey as a young professional, pretty much as I was graduating and starting to take on more professional responsibilities in the center. And in Rainey, what I found was a woman who was generous and open and kind and loved to laugh and had a spine of steel. So I think one thing that people sometimes missed about Rainey was her strong spirit. She was very open and loving, but I remember coming to her office for a meeting one time just as a student was leaving, and the student did not look at all happy as he was leaving her office. When I came in, Rainey mentioned that that student had been there to appeal a not pass grade in one of the adjunct courses because he had not attended and turned in enough of the work. And one of the things that stuck with me that Rainey went on to say is that sometimes people think because I'm nice, I'm not serious. And I think that was a mistake no one wanted to make twice. Her commitment to the individual, it's a little hard to describe, but I felt that she really saw each person who was before her, whether it was a student or a staff person. She really got to know her staff and colleagues, and we became friends. Her spirit was generous enough that she would share the things that she was doing, whether it was the middle of having her house re-roofed or the bird watching trip, the hike that she'd been on. Those are things that, in sharing them of herself, she invited people to share with her, and she saw and honored what each person shared with her. And I know it gave me a lot of courage to be who I was, to pursue the things that I wanted to pursue. She was a model of somebody who, as a professional, was engaged still actively in her own learning, and that inquiry process never stopped. Even something as specific as, along with Cara, attending an American Educational Research Association conference gave me a model of how to be a professional in a field, how to have colleagues, how to stay, what the role of conferences and colleagues at other campuses could be. And I know it expanded my horizons. So I felt that even though I stayed at Berkeley, my sense of myself as a professional and my sense of the field of work that I was entering was much bigger than it would have been otherwise. I think, too, that Rainey gave so much support. I know, to me, at different times, she was just a terrific friend. I always felt that she was in my corner, and I just can't, I can't really say how much that has meant to me at different points in my life. But what Rainey brought in terms of caring for people honestly and seeing them as a whole person is something that has really stayed with me. There are many times in my life that I think about her and what she would advise me to do. And yes, sometimes those are in meetings at work when I'm trying to figure out how to be what she would have been, to be honest, to not hold back the truth, but to be civil and compassionate in doing that. It gave her the ability to engage with people that she really maybe didn't have a lot in common with in terms of point of view, but she had a way that she could draw people into discussion and get different perspectives recognized. And I think in large part that's also what she valued in the small adjunct courses that she was so enthusiastic about. So thank you for letting me talk a little bit about her today, and I'm so thrilled to have Ted and Dan and Marion here tonight, and thank you for letting me share a little bit.
Thank you. It's such an honor to have this platform to share some memories about Rainey. With apologies to Bonsoon, I'm going to tell a joke. So Cara mentioned Rainey was, I think you used the word strapping. Rainey was a very tall woman, very tall for a woman. Sometimes I get that too. You're very tall for a Mexican. Apart from being tall, Rainey had stature. It's one thing to be tall, it's another thing to have stature. Another thing Rainey had is she had presence. For many years after she retired, I couldn't think of the atrium without her presence. It's one thing to be there, it's another thing to have presence. Rainey was also very reflective and encouraged reflection from everyone. It's one thing to meditate, it's another thing to reflect. You see where I'm going with this, right? Rainey was an example for me coming out of graduate school in a PhD program in English at UC Santa Barbara. And often in PhD programs, it's not a popular thing to reveal that you love teaching or that you love connecting with students in office hours, as much as you love that research in the library or in the archives or what may have you. But that was my passion. And for me in 1998, coming out of grad school, to be able to come to a space where teaching and learning and that big P word that Kyle and Maria used, pedagogy, was something to be pursued and to be valued equally as much as scholarship, was such a godsend. At that time in the late 90s, I was also coming out as a gay man. And for me to be able to come into my own, not only personally, but professionally, was such a huge gift. So when we talk about the adjuncts, and a lot of speakers prior have talked about the power of the adjuncts, whether it's math or statistics or the social sciences, those are things that we encourage students to do. We encourage them to have stature. to be reflective, to stand tall, to think about their presence when they're in their classroom. And so for me, those are the lessons that I learned, that a lot of the instructors learned by having just the space to be able to share lesson plans, to talk about student cases, to talk about student issues. And for me, I try to carry that legacy because she didn't just impact my career, she impacted and inspired my life's work. And so every student that walks through our doors who comes to me has those gifts that I would like to pass on. I still remember my interview for this position 15 years ago. And my predecessor, Mary Dolan, and Rainey interviewed me for this position. And there were a lot of questions about teaching and learning and pedagogy. But the very last question has always stayed with me. And on the surface, it's a very softball question, you know? The question was, if a student were in emotional distress, would you walk them to counseling, to Tang Center? And at first I was like, well, is this a trick question? And I answered, of course. Of course I would walk them to counseling. And that question has always stayed with me because it's something that in our work is so important that we try to impart to all the tutors, especially the peer mentors, that we should always pay attention to a student's presence and to help them reach the stature that they are meant to. Those are the gifts that Rainey gave me personally and that really transformed us as a center. So I want to thank her family for being here. I especially want to thank personally Cara Stanley for just carrying on her legacy. And I want to crack another joke to keep from crying, but I'll just leave it at that. So thank you, everyone, for all your kind words and all your memories, and for giving back in all the fields that you represent. Thank you so much. And we'll turn it over to Cara.
First and foremost, I appreciate your grace. I know it's more than a notion to listen to 12 people talk. We tried to organize it where it was 2.5 minutes, but sometimes spirit just takes people away. Before I close, I'd like to recognize all the Learning Center tutors, past and present, future. My little goddaughter's here. I hope she gets in the Cal and becomes a tutor in the Learning Center. Could you please stand? All the former tutors and former staff of the Student Learning Center. I just want to, this is about acknowledging our work for the last 4 decades. I hope all the colleagues, faculty, family, and friends recognize why it is that we as your family members, colleagues often don't have time to attend meetings. We put students at the center of our work. I hope you've gotten that tonight. I know galas and fundraisers can be awkward. I hope that your hearts were touched this evening, that you feel it inside to give to the Learning Center so that this work is sustained for future generations. As California gets more complicated in terms of the types of students that the University of California continues to try to educate for the good of our state, for the good of our nation, and for the good of the globe, I pray that we all begin to make education a priority, that we begin to be proactive in our hearts as opposed to reactive. I have dedicated 22 years of my life to the Learning Center and realized in planning this that I've been connected to the center for 30 years. I entered as a Kim P. tutor in 1983. I have never been anywhere that long other than in my own body, and I was really shocked because I came to Cal to be a dentist. And the Learning Center planted in my heart the deep, abiding clarity of my life purpose to be an educator. And I am personally grateful and have been transformed by the Learning Center. Jerlina talked about why I use the word scholar. Is because when I sat in MSP workshops and was taught by Eric Mebane, Carl Alexander, that they modeled for me what it meant to be a serious scholar. And so just as Gonzalo referenced for me to honor Rainey's legacy, I wanted to honor their legacy as tutors of mine, to model for other undergraduates in the way that they had modeled for me. And our hopes as a center is to begin learning to model that for middle schoolers. So I'm proud to say that we're gonna have our third cohort of middle schoolers. We have a 6th grade cohort, a 7th grade cohort, and an 8th grade cohort, And this year's applications is the first time I asked for transcripts so that I could begin to track how the scholars who participated in SPEAR are doing. And I'm excited to say that I have a Maria Martinez story in a Tibetan young woman who's a middle school scholar at Albany who entered with us in the 6th grade hating math. And she reported in her application this year, it's her favorite subject. And she has an A+ in algebra. The Learning Center keeps giving, and I am extremely proud of the work that we do. And Meg, where are you? Meg is an ambassador that is working to, hopefully you all felt warmly greeted and loved by the Learning Center tonight. And Meg is a young woman who was like, Cara, I'm Armenian. Our family is used to asking for money. And I really think it would be an honor if we gave everybody beautiful chocolates. And so thank Med for the beautiful chocolate. This is the beauty about collaborating with the brilliant young scholars that Cal accepts. So Meg wanted to tell you about why it is that she feels you should contribute.
Well, that was a great introduction, Cara. A little bit blunt. That was supposed to stay between us. Well, before we depart from this wonderful night, I would like to personally thank you all for joining us in celebration of the 40th anniversary of the Student Learning Center. Thank you all. As a student and tutor, the SLC has touched me in more ways than one. When I was first chosen as a tutor for the SLC, I was excited to teach the subject I loved most, Introduction to Empirical Analysis and Quantitative Method. Sounds harsh, but I loved it. I was ready to motivate, challenge, and inspire my students. But what I was not prepared for was the vast amount of experience I would attain as a tutor. Week after week, I learned the definition of leadership. Tutor, it's a small, simple word, but filled with so much promise. As a tutor, leading discussion groups, I began to learn to perfect my communication skills by attentively and patiently listening to each and every student's responses. I perfected my teaching skills by setting a comfortable environment in which the students could feel at ease when coming forth with their concerns and struggles. However, I also purposely created uncomfortable situations in order for students to come to face and to overcome their individual challenges. As I had prepared my students also prepared me. And as my students thanked me, I also returned the favor. This is why I stand here today, and I humbly thank you all for your time and effort that you have given for my family. Yes, the SLC, in my eyes, and in many others, is looked upon as a family. This is where leaders are created. And this is why I humbly thank you for all you have given and to keep giving to my family in order for us to celebrate the 50th, 60th, and maybe even the 100th anniversary of the Student Learning Center. Before I end my speech, I would like to thank Kara. Kara, why I view you as such an inspirational person is because I learned that you do not look down upon students. You look up to students, and you taught us what leadership means, which is why I look forward to becoming a leader in the future, and which is why the SLC has personally changed my life in so many ways. I would also like to thank the staff for teaching and for learning and for also being such a great mentor to students. And I'd also like to thank my boss, Rex DeGao. Rex, if it were not for you, I would not be here. And I really thank you for entrusting me to be a tutor in this great institution. So with that being said, I'm so thankful. I am so blessed. And with just a short amount of time serving as a tutor, I only served as a tutor for 1 semester. I really got to know what family meant. I'm an Armenian, and we have a huge family. I have 14 first cousins, and I have 22 second cousins. I have 3 sisters, and my oldest sister just passed the bar. So for me, I got to put my foot into my second family. And I hope I return, and I hope I see the SLC growing. And it cannot grow unless each of us reciprocate this, unless each of us actually put in. We donate, we give our all. So I thank you again. And I thank you all for being here and for patiently waiting for me to speak, because I know I'm the last. And please enjoy the chocolates. And while you eat them, think of all the beautiful, beautiful money you have given to this institution. Because let me just tell you, as a student, $300 plate is a very big deal for me. It's going from $7. So thank you.
So please stay with us and enjoy dancing. The bar is still open. And thank you for joining us this evening. You make the checks out to UC Regent. Just in case you will all be so kind, we do have a metal money box. I think Louisa, but I won't do what Isaiah Thomas did, although I'm tempted to, but I won't. So if you find it in your heart to support us in the future, even if it's not tonight, please do so. The Gala serves as the kickoff for our 40 for 40 campaign, which we will start next week. We will be sending out information to all the 80,000 users and hope that they will find us worthy of $40 to support us. So thank you all for coming this evening. I hope you had a good time. You enjoyed the meal, festivities, the drinks, the stories that all the wonderful alumni shared with us. I hope it was inspiring. And if you don't stay with us, have a safe trip tonight. And again, thank you so much.